So we will go ahead and get started because we have several prompts to cover today. If this is your first time joining us for the write-in, we've some new snazzy slides today, but the write-in is a collaborative webinar. I'll do a little bit of teaching at the beginning, but then for most of the webinar, you will be working on prompts, and then we'll be coming back together to share them in the chat. So someone already said this in the chat, but a friendly reminder, if you want everyone to see your writing, please select all panelists and attendees. It's on the drop-down menu next to 2. That way you can make sure other people can see your work. If you send it to just panelists, then just I can see it. So we will get 2 points during this webinar where you will have an opportunity to work on particular prompts, and then I will ask you to share about those in the chat if you feel comfortable. And so again, if you want everyone to see those, please select all panelists and attendees. It's right next to the little 2 drop down so that everyone can see it. But that being said, you definitely do not need to share if you feel uncomfortable. And if you prefer to write on pen and paper or not on computer, it's totally up to you. Hi from Jamaica. Hi, Leanne. Okay, so for those of you who do not know me, my name is Hayley. I am the head of education at ProWritingAid, and I am also a freelance writer. I've been writing for almost 10 years at this point, both blogs, academic papers, and then also fiction. And I got my start writing as a youth in fan fiction. So I'm really excited to talk about fan fiction today and to specifically talk about how fan fiction can build both your writing practice and then also can be something that you turn into original work later. I think fan fiction is a fantastic tool for that. Hi, Andrea. I'm excited too. Okay, so let's first talk about what fan fiction is. So fan fiction is fictional writing by an amateur, written in an amateur capacity by fans of something. So you can be a fan of a TV series, a book, a movie, a sports team. Really, there are fandoms and fan fiction about pretty much anything that you can like. So it's basically, if you have something you love, like say you love Harry Potter and you're like, I just wish there was more Harry Potter, and you decide to take it into your own hands and write some more Harry Potter. Or you might be like, I want to read more about Harry Potter, and there are other people who've written about Harry Potter who aren't J.K. Rowling, who are amateurs and don't get paid, and I want to read what they write. So I think kind of historically, fan fiction has had a little bit of like a bad reputation that it's, nerdy or that the quality isn't that great. And to most of those people, I would say that is not true. First of all, many famous authors have gotten their start writing fan fiction. So 50 Shades of Grey, for instance, which is one of the most best-selling books of all time, started as fan fiction. It started as Twilight fan fiction. So clearly, E.L. James was able to convert into like truly one of the best-selling books of all time. But if 50 Shades of Grey isn't your cup of tea, more auteur authors have also gotten their start in fan fiction. So N.K. Jemisin, who's the only author to win the Hugo Award 3 years in a row, credits fan fiction as developing their skills, learning how to kind of write for a community, and really just being a great place to practice writing. So I find for myself, as someone who reads fan fiction and as somebody who wants to practice writing, fan fiction is a phenomenal tool to just enjoy something that you love a little bit more if you want to go wade in and find more content, but it's also a really great way to build your writing skills, which we'll talk about more in a second. And while there are, plenty of fanfics that might be like cringy or might not be your cup of tea, it doesn't really matter. There are very, very talented authors in the fanfic community. And it's really important to, you can support those people. You can wade through stuff that you just don't really love. And again, it's just such a great place to practice, which we'll talk about in a second. And if you haven't read any fan fiction and you think that it's all like probably bad, I would just give you, like, after this, go to one of the fan fiction websites and like search for stories that have like tons of comments or tons of likes, depending on the platform. And if you see something, you'll find things that have tens of thousands of likes, and those are almost always like incredibly high quality and really enjoyable. Okay, so let's talk about some of the benefits of using fan fiction. And Anita, we'll talk about copyright in a little bit. So one of the best things about fanfic is that it lets you remix story elements. So for many writers, particularly amateur writers, world building and character development are incredibly hard. And it can be like a way of, it can be something that stops you from writing, right? If you're like, oh, I just don't know where to start. I don't know who my character is going to be, but I want to write. In fan fiction, you don't have to worry about that, right? You have existing like characters, you have an existing world, and you can just practice putting those characters in a new scenario. So it's a way of like getting out there and writing very quickly without having to do all of the kind of background work of world building and character development. This is what I do when I am trying to like just practice my craft, but I don't really want to worry about like character development, or I get too stuck in that. At that point, I just come to a world that I love and I say, okay, let me try to put my characters in a different situation, see how it goes. And again, like that lets me hone my craft, like get started really quick and easy. I can start without any kind of background knowledge because I have all the background knowledge from that thing that I've worked on before. Yeah, it seems like in the chat, it's a lot of people are saying yes, same exact thing for them. And Leanne, I totally agree. It's a great way to get feedback, which we'll talk about in a second. Andrea, I know since you are a fanfic person, can you drop some of the good ones in the chat? The kind of main ones are archiveofourown.com, .org, excuse me, which is my favorite. You can read for free, but you do have to join like a short waiting list to be able to upload. Fanfiction.net is like the traditional kind of one. And then Wattpad also has fanfic on it. And then if you just go to like Tumblr, you can also find sometimes people will upload like drabbles, so like shorter pieces onto their individual Tumblrs, and you can usually find like within a particular writing community. But I would definitely start with Archive of Our Own. I think that is by far like the highest kind of quality. And there are some good archives for individual fandoms as well. So outside of Tumblr, like Harry Potter I don't even know how many of the Harry Potter ones are still active, but Harry Potter had like huge fan fiction sites, like archives like Portkey and stuff like that, that were all like big fanfic places for specifically that fandom. So some of the bigger kind of names, particularly in fantasy, so like Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Hunger Games, things that are like big cultural moments, those will have, they might have their own kind of archives as well. Okay, so again, for us as writers coming in to be able to like just start writing and practice and remix story elements without having to try something new or without having to do world building or character development is so important. Fanfiction is also amazing because it's an opportunity to study what you love. So the best writers are people who read a lot and learn from studying other authors in their genre, and fanfiction enables this, right? So if you're writing in a specific world, you're going to pay more attention to how the original creator developed and wrote or built that world, which in turn helps you study and improve your skills. I was talking to Andrea and some of the people in our ProWritingAid Academy group about how much I love Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. And I started, because of that, I was really interested in like, okay, I wanted to see another scene with these particular characters. So I was going to write it myself. And it forced me to go back and look at what I really like about what Bardugo is doing and then try to emulate that myself. So that was, you know, just a fun exercise for me in a fan fiction way. But then I can also apply those lessons that I've learned from building that scene into my own original fiction as well. So because in fan fiction, you're really, really closely tied to, you know, what a particular author or creator is doing, you're more trying to emulate that and then bring it in, you can bring it into your original fiction later. So, you know, you can look at how an author developed a character, how they set up their world, right? Thinking about things like that and then practicing emulating those yourself in the lower stakes environment of fan fiction really helps when you go into your original fiction. Now, like somebody mentioned, I think it was Leanne in the chat, fan fiction communities are a great place to meet and find like-minded writers. So they're places that can encourage creativity and discussion. Most of them have ways to leave feedback and have mechanisms like giving praise, commenting, etc., kudos, depending on which program you're using, that encourage support and connection. So it's a great way to just like get somebody to acknowledge your writing, which I feel like for a lot of us is really challenging. because we just like write in this vacuum and we're often scared to like put something out into the world. With fan fiction, you're just putting something anonymous out into the world, and people will read it and they'll give you praise and you'll get some feedback right away. So it's really a quick way to get feedback. It's a quick way to find places where people who are interested in the same types of writing that you're doing are there. And it's just a nice way to connect with people as well. So you can do this either within the fan fiction platform itself, or things like Discord groups, etc. Like somebody like Michael's saying in the chat are also great for giving and getting feedback. But the nice thing about the fan fiction communities is that there's built-in readers who are already coming to there, right? So you don't have to do the work of kind of finding a Discord group. You can just upload to archive of our own, add the tags, and then people will find it from there. So it's really, really a great way to build community, to get to know people, and again, to get that feedback in like a very low key way, which is great. Okay. So we're going to transition to the part of this where we work through a couple prompts, and these prompts will be related to what we just talked about, some of the benefits of fan fiction. Now, for each prompt, you will see the prompt, and then there will be a short timer. You will work on the prompt by yourself, and then you can come in and share when the timer is done. And again, if you want everyone to see it, please make sure that you do for panelists and attendees. Okay, so as we mentioned, one of the best parts of fan fiction is that it allows you to learn from the creators of your favorite works of art. So what I want you to do first is just identify one of your favorite fandoms. I think for this, let's pick writing just because it's going to be the easiest to apply. But think about a book that you really like and just create a list of all of the things you like about how that creator built their world and characters. So for instance, for me, because I'm really into what Leigh Bardugo has done, I really enjoy that she has given a lot of characterization through flashbacks. And I think that's a really interesting tool of how to kind of like further the plot while also fleshing out these central characters. So that's one of the things that I would do. So for you, again, identify one of your favorite fandoms. It doesn't have to be something fantasy related. It can just be an author of any kind that you're a fan of, and then brainstorm all the things you like about what that creator did to build their world, their characters, about their prose, whatever you like. So I'm going to start the timer. We have 5 minutes, and then we can come back and share in the chat. Okay, let's bring it back together. So just like Sandra did in the chat, you can share, you can share the author that you admire and what you admire about them. So Sandra admires Jurassic Park. I also love Jurassic Park. Narratively styled in the way that it could actually happen. The characters are not good, so people are there because of money, breaking discoveries. The reason of the dinosaurs' escape is a logical error. Vivid descriptions of both surroundings as well as animals, events, unpredictability, and a truly original idea. So nothing like it's been done before. Okay, so then we have Wesley, who said Trudy Canavan, the Millennium's Rule series. Got two great main characters, multiple worlds with different degrees of magic, and she manages to invoke different ideas in the reader by how she uses something familiar but with difference. So airships that run with magic instead of hot air or motors, and easy to understand language and word use. I think this is great. Both of these have such a really great way of kind of going into what someone specific likes. And I love how both of them have picked really particular pieces. So like for Sandra, the logical error in the dinosaurs escape. For Wesley, the kind of the twist on something real. That was actually one of the things I was talking about when I made my list. I was looking at the author Sabaa Tahir, who does, or Sabaa, I hope I don't mispronounce it, but she takes elements of Middle Eastern fantasy and puts them into a new world. And I really love the idea of taking elements of, fantasy that we like, and then how that would kind of, how that would be somewhere else. So someone said Lee Childs for Jack Reacher. So strong character with a strong background, visually engaging fighting sequences, which I think is really important. And how Lee Child specifically explains the mechanisms of fighting. Anita says, J.K. Rowling did a fantastic job of introducing elements in early stories and then not explaining them fully, which I totally think is true. And just J.K. Rowling especially, I think, does a great job of just layering things throughout each of her subsequent books. I always, when I see people who write series like that, I'm like, did you mean it? Did it happen later? How did you plan that out? Andrea has Naruto. So yes, Andrea has a great point that you can find things that you both like and hate about something. So Andrea has some things that she hates in here about terrible female character development. So I think that's a really important thing that you can learn from mistakes that authors that you admire have made, even while you still have things that Andrea loves, like about how the two protagonists are bringing out a lot of emotion in the fandom. Dallas McGee has Casey McQuiston. I just read Red, White, and Royal Blue. It's right there behind me. I just read that yesterday. But yes, I totally agree with what you're saying. Fantasy elements in a realistic world, 100%. Lovecraft, Jack, yes. Indescribable creatures, the sense of foreboding. I mean, I think everybody kind of, if you're familiar with Lovecraft's work, there's just such a atmosphere, such an important piece of that, which is amazing. And yeah, I think the whole idea that there are Lovecraftian spins on things is because of what a great job he has done, building those types of worlds. Okay, let's see what else. Okay, so Black Flamingo says, I realized a lot of my favorite books include an introduction by a different character or a different time than the rest of the book. So true. That's something that Leigh Bardugo does a lot, just drops you in to do a bit of world building without really knowing how that's going to tie to the rest of it later. Someone says Shalimar the Clown, by Rusty, excuse me. Liked the connection of European and Indian history, just enough information, looking at the problem from both sides, totally. Marv has My Man Jeeves, Real World in the Post-Golden Age, humor and writing are impeccable. Ayn Rand, Dawn says, built the world in black or white with no gray areas. Yes, totally can, you can totally emulate that. Peyton or Key says, author Davis Bunn, writer of many, many novels in different genres, world building, distinct psychological metaphors, and his very visceral descriptions of both sites. Yes. Pauline says John Grisham, who builds memorable characters and uses simple descriptions to create complex characters. Awesome. Leanne talks about Harry Potter with unexpected connections. Yes, exactly. No entirely good guys, I think is really true. And then unapologetically themselves, characters like Sirius and Luna, totally. Judy talks about Deborah Harkness's Awakening of Witches, another book that I love. Yes, so many like kind of combinations of things that we understand, travel into different worlds, etc. Then NF Bernie says the Murderbot Diaries, it's sentient and self-aware cybernetic construct designed for violence and security. Obsessed with space, constantly working towards its own sense of freedom. Yes. And then we've got Michael Crichton, so an audiobook of 1984 as well. And then Rich says, Crichton's thrillers have a way of sprinkling the words he said throughout every page. Orwell never did that, and it always left me with the choice of reaching an exciting science fiction story with some just distracting language or a beautiful story about dystopia. Yeah, so I think this is really fascinating, and this is one of the things I want to encourage you to do, whether or not you decide to write fan fiction in the future, is just think, what can I learn about this author? And I do think fan fiction is a great way to practice, like, how can I set up a sentence like this author did? How can I create a character like this author did? And not the same character, but how can I build a character in the same way? How can I find something that this author did and emulate it in my own way? I think is a great way of kind of converting what you would learn from fan fiction into your own work. Okay, so our second prompt. As I mentioned on previous slides, one of the best parts about fan fiction is that it lets you hone your craft without doing a ton of the hard work of world building or character development. So you can practice just like putting a character into a situation and playing that whole scene out without having to think of like, what are the character's motivations or anything like that, because you know them already, right? Like, you know what this character is, you know how they act, you know how they react to people. So for the second prompt, I want you to pick a character from one of your favorite works and just imagine that character having a conversation with their noisy neighbor. So even if that character doesn't have neighbors or wouldn't, consider how they would act in a situation where they're having a conversation with their noisy neighbor. So write that scene, and I want you to think about not just writing the character in a way that's true to the story, but how can you emulate the writing style of the author, right? So if it's somebody who does long descriptive passages, maybe you're writing that way. If it's someone who does a lot of short, choppy dialogue, maybe you're writing that way. But this will be our second prompt for 7 minutes to pretend, again, we're writing a character from one of our favorite works, trying to emulate both the character's development as well as the style of that author. So 7 minutes starting now. All right. Dawn just dropped hers theirs in the chat. And I was reading it and I initially was like, oh my God, is this? I was like, have I been playing a saxophone? Is Dawn threatening me? So Dawn, you've done a great job. Dawn says, I can imagine you believe you're the only person in the world, but here's a news flash. We all live together. And if you continue to wreak havoc with your saxophone, I shall buy this building and have you evicted. In the meantime, I will pay someone to break both of your hands. So Dawn, truly, it was chilling. I read it as it came in. I was like, oh my, is this hate mail for me? So excellent work embodying a threatening character. I wonder, I'm curious who it is. So anyway, feel free to drop into the chat your pieces. And, if you are unclear or if you want to, you can either have us guess who the character is, or you can potentially just tell us who it is. So Andrea's clearly is Naruto. But I think it'd also be fun if, you can give a hint or have us guess who your characters are. Let's see. All right, so Ian's got some Star Trek going on. So Ian says, Captain Spock knocked on the door of the next door neighbor's house. Great Spock dialogue here. So I come to ask that you turn the music down so the neighborhood can sleep at night. Simple logic, Spock said. One, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one, and for the health of your own hearing. So I feel like that's such a great representation of Spock's just characterization, which is great. Okay, so Andrea has Naruto shouting and pounding the wall and frowns when there's no change in volume, and then leaping on the roof to make his way over to the neighbor's balcony. So we've got someone with Jack Reacher who's presenting a very, very, very statement oriented, right? Just like, I need you to turn down the music. Why? And then I love the last line, the ability to stand up straight, move about, breathe. Clearly Jack Reacher is an intimidating character. So we see that in this interaction that he's used to getting what he wants. Okay, let's see what else we have in here. So David says, both were tall men built like tigers, their corselets battered and dented, blood dried on their mail, their swords stained red. Tell me your name. The sounds and clamor of your revelry seem inviting. These are so great. Everyone's dialogue is so different, which is so fantastic because I think it's just such a great representation of the content itself. Okay. Let's see. Pauline says, when I eventually came back to the real world, and by that I mean the world outside of the four walls of the sanatorium, I rented an apartment down Richmond Street. Hiya, neighbor. Welcome to the neighborhood. The nifty 90-something from the apartment next door said, finally caught me opening my door. Good evening, came my curt reply, giving no permission to bring the conversation any further. Great. These are such fantastic jobs with characterization. And I think this is the key with fan fiction, right? Like we know how the character will behave, so we're able to just jump right into creating a scene more effectively than when we're trying to think about motivations and worried about plot and scene structure and all that type of stuff. Fan fiction can really free you from that. And so then a lot of times the quality of the craft of your writing is higher because you're not worrying about all of the extra stuff. So it's a really, really fantastic exercise. And again, just jumping right into, let me create some engaging dialogue without having to worry about all the extra trappings. Okay, so just so we have enough time, let's move on to our final prompt, which is about genre experimentation. So one of the things that's also so great about fan fiction is that it gives you room to experiment in genres and styles of storytelling that you normally wouldn't explore, because you can play around in something without having to completely build something new. So if you're not a fantasy writer, but you want to try to write in, fantasy world, you have that world already built for you. If you want to try writing romance, you can do that in fan fiction. If you want to try horror, if you want to try crime, if you want to try anything like that, Fan fiction, again, gives you the pre-made like container of that thing without having to like be a writer in that genre. So this is a great way to like flex your muscles and try some new things. So for this final prompt, which we'll have 10 minutes for, I want you to pick a work that you love, but one that's in a genre different than one that you normally write in. Try to create a deleted scene for that work. So something that could happen in that story, or that book or that movie or that TV show, etc., that you know pretty well, and write something that's kind of in the canon of that piece, but it's got to be a genre that's different than what you normally write in. So I will not be choosing fantasy. I'll be going with something else. Okay, so let's dive in. We have 10 minutes. Okay, we will bring it back together for the final chats. We have some people sharing in the chat already. So Leanne shared a deleted scene from the Marauders, talking with young Sirius. And I feel like Leanne's done a great job of implementing one of the things that J.K. Rowling does a lot, which is kind of like the setting up the magical world in contrast to the Muggle world that's there, by having Sirius kind of observe what's happening around him in a way that the Muggles don't understand. Andrea has a Hunger Games deleted scene here about Joanna in the Capitol, which is great. And I think you've done a great job of kind of mimicking Suzanne Collins's very simple phrasing, which is really powerful. Kathleen has Roger laying next to his fallen Marine brother, refusing to die like that. Home, home, home. I will make it home. I will. Roger's going home. Great. It's funny. So we do these every month, and I will definitely say that, like, overall, I feel like the quality of all of the fan fiction prompts that are coming in are on the whole stronger than the quality of some of the original fiction that comes in. And I think that's not to say that none of us should write original fiction. I think that's a proof point for how fan fiction can really, really help you hone your craft, and can really help you think about the sentences and the structure of your sentences and how you're describing what characters are doing. Because again, it's freeing you from that worry about plot and about pacing and all that other stuff and about character development. You don't have to worry about that in fan fiction because it's such a medium with an existing container, because also the formatting doesn't matter. Someone was saying in the chat too that fan fiction not only lets you experiment with genres and experiment with characters, it also lets you experiment with how things look. Like, a fanfic might be just a single scene. It might be just one character's thoughts in a scene. It might be a letter that one character is writing to another. It might be a full-length work. It might be a deleted scene. It can be truly anything. But again, when you're taking it out of the thought of how it fits into the plot, when you're free of who the characters are, and free of making people care about the characters too, because anyone who's reading your fan fiction is going to like those characters because they're in that fandom, right? Like, you don't have to worry about any of that. So you just have to worry about your writing. So I'd really encourage you, as we wrap up the webinar today, to think about building fan fiction into your writing practice, again, specifically to think about how you can work on craft with it. Like, how can fan fiction be a place for you to practice putting scenes together, and just putting one scene together in an engaging way, or trying out a tool like a letter that a character is writing to another, or trying a different genre. Again, there's just so much flexibility here when you're taken out of the world of worrying about plot, character development, world building, etc., or format, where it just frees you to really focus on how your writing specifically. And, I think it's a really, really powerful way to work. Somebody says that they find it a lot more difficult than original writing, which is fine. It doesn't have to be something that you do by any means. Some people really like it. I find fan fiction way easier. I think a lot of people do, but a lot of people find it harder or don't care about it as much. So it doesn't have to be something that you try. But again, I think it's a really powerful tool, particularly to think about craft and to think about how you're setting up sentences, how you were getting your sentences to tell a particular story, and to really just strip away all of the pieces that hang over our heads when we're writing original fiction, and just experiment and have fun. We are just about out of time. So I just want to say thank you to everybody so much for participating today. We will be back next month. We do the write-ins the last Tuesday of every month, or the fourth Tuesday, of every month. So thank you all so much for joining. I hope that you had fun. Again, if you are interested in reading some fan fiction, check out Archive of Our Own or fanfiction.net. Try to build this into your practice and just see if it's helpful. And if you take absolutely anything away from this, take off studying your favorite authors. So study your favorite authors. see what they do and try to emulate that as well. Links for this will go out tomorrow. This will be uploaded to our YouTube channel as well as added to prowritingaid.com/past-webinars. So thank you all so much. It was really fun to see you all here, and we will see you next week. Bye.